Welcome back. Our second story tonight is from Bengaluru, where a week after floods wreaked havoc in the city's IT corridor, the BBMP has been carrying out a demolition against stormwater drain encroachments. But residents are alleging that the authorities are acting only against the common man and not going after the mighty and well-connected who have encroached on the stormwater drain land. So, is this only a token demolition drive? And will the big fish get away?
Buildings that have been identified by the officials, and now they are removing those encroachments.
All right, so is this selective demolition that the BBMP is doing? How come they're not going after the bigger fish and only targeting the common man? Dr. Vaman Acharya is spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP. Dr. Kavita Reddy, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Leo Saldana is founder of the Environment Support Group. Dr. Vaman Acharya, let me start with you. None of the big names, the big fish, whether it is Mantri, whether it is the Bagmane people, whether it is EcoSpace. These are all people who have encroached into acres and acres of land on lake beds, on stormwater drain land. None of them the BBMP has acted against or demolished, but it's the small fish that they've gone after. That's the allegation from the locals there.
No, BBMP has not been selected there. Whosoever has constructed their buildings and obliterating the flow of the water on Raja Kalways have been demolished, because all the demolitions cannot be done overnight. Whosoever has done the mistake, action will be taken maybe 1 or 2 days later. Now, only at 8 places the demolition activity they have taken. It is not to demolish the buildings, it is to ease the water that has to flow.
But Dr. Acharya, by the BBMP's own list that they released a few days ago after the rains, the Bagmane Tech Park, parts of it had encroached on stormwater drain land. You had the EcoSpace, again in the Martali Belandur belt, encroaching on stormwater drain land. Why are those? Why is action not being taken against these bigger fish? Mantri, in fact, was ordered by the Supreme Court to pay 100 crores. What has happened to that?
Mantri is not on that drain line. It is bit away. See, you consider the practical approach. These big buildings are there. They are on our list. They will be demolished. But the problem is, if you take up demolition, it will take days and days together. We can't do it as it was done in near Delhi. We can't put bombs for everybody. It has to be done systematically. Whichever smaller buildings are there, which are really rating, they are being cleared now.
Dr. Kavita Reddy, amongst the people whose buildings were demolished today happens to be Mr. Nalapad and Mr. N.A. Harris. Apparently, they have an educational institution of some form that they were running there. And that was also demolished. So it's not just the small, you can't say only the small fish have been gone after. By no means are Mr. Nalapad or his father, Mr. Harris, small fish. They are as big fish as it comes. You have to unmute, ma'am. I can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself, ma'am. Otherwise you can't be heard.
Our CLP leader and anybody for that matter should, the law has to take its own course. Nobody spared if they had done it wrong. The CLP leader of the opposition today, Siddaramaiah, had mentioned very clearly that our government had identified 1,950 encroachment, out of which 1,450 we removed when our government was there. So he has requested for the white paper on the balance, why the balance have to not yet removed, because by then our tenure was over. Whatever the balance is, which is about 500 odd encroachments, that has to be removed. So the first thing, the government has to come out with a white paper saying that these are the encroachments which has been identified in the previous government. This was what was demolished in this particular duration, and this is what is pending. I think that gives a lot of transparency to the work which the government does, so that it eases out all these kind of problems which are coming. It shouldn't be a thing like Congress versus BJP, because brand Bangalore should not suffer.
No, I want to ask Leo Saldana, because, the moot question is, ma'am, 1 second with your permission. Let me ask Leo Saldana. The moot question that needs to be asked is who gave permission for all of these buildings to come up in the first place? I mean, these should not have come up on lake beds. These should not have come up on what is the natural flow of stormwater drains. But it came up, and big buildings have come up. IT parks have come up. Who gave the permission for this to come up in the first
Congress
place?
government has given in the
Leo Saldana, I'm asking him.
Vamanacharya was the chairman of the Pollution Control Board, and I did not see him act against any pollution of any of the kahlways and the lakes during his term. That said, he was also chairman of the Infrastructure Committee in the Ministry of Environment and Forest, and there too I don't see him acting on the environmental violations that have taken place. And therefore the Supreme Court and the NGT and the High Court have been hard pressed to get in. The Santosh Hegde committee is also there. Santosh Hegde committee is also there, which went into the aspect of encroachment of kahlways as an outcome of an NGT proceedings. But I want to bring attention to a March 2020 order by Chief Justice Abhay Hoke, in which he said enough is enough. Now get the surveyors, go and find every little encroachment that has taken place of all the kahlways, the canals, the stormwater drains, and the lakes, and enforce the order of the High Court of 2012, April 2012, in a case which I filed and I fought, in which Justice N.K. Patil committee gave an extraordinarily detailed set of guidelines on how to rescue the kahlways so there is no flooding, and how to rescue the lakes so that they are not contaminated and they don't remain brimming with sewage water, unable to receive flood waters whenever that happens.
But Mr. Saldana, one question. Courts can give whatever order they are giving, but if BBMP officials are not going to implement those court orders, as we've seen in the case of Mantri, then how can courts help it? And then where does the common man turn to?
I want to say also that yesterday there was a hearing on the same aspect. And, the courts are like, wondering what else can we do? We can issue orders. If they don't comply, if a government does not comply with court orders, what is a private real estate developer or BlackRock or one of those big developers taking a lesson from? They say government is violating, so let's also go with the violators.
Dr. Vamanacharya, this is something that the High Court also took up recently, that if BBMP officials are not going to implement their orders, then what's the point of them passing orders in the first place?
The BBMP is on its way. It is doing the demolition activity. Such things are so much that there are political pressures, there are social pressures, and in these big apartments which have been built, there are thousands of people staying there. You can't go and demolish overnight all these buildings.
Sir, would you rather still have those buildings stand and Bangalore be flooded again next year? Just like what we saw this year.
They have to be demolished. They have to be demolished.
So has not been given on the March 2020 order of the High Court. High Court gave a detailed order.
We can't do it overnight.
Sir, these buildings have not come up overnight. These buildings have also taken 5-10 years to come up.
These are all the sins committed by Congress governments, one after the other in the past. Who permitted them? The question you asked is very, very nice and timely. Who permitted them to build such buildings? It was during Congress period that all these were built.
Fair enough. I'll ask